Hey everybody, Adam here. We'll get to the episode in just a moment. Just a couple of quick admin things before we get started though. We had a lot of lag compared to other times that made it hard to prevent crosstalk and hard to edit around crosstalk. So I've done what I can, but you'll still hear some here and there, and my apologies for that. There is also some kind of odd resonance on my end. We don't record in studios, we record in our houses, and so we've done our best to remove it, but you may still get some odd chirping sounds here and there. I've done my best to remove them. The last thing I don't really have an excuse for, this was an episode where my head was just not screwed on tight, and so I kept messing up some of the names. I think I caught myself saying Confluence when I met Manifestation a couple of times, and at least once I referred to Romnet as Dask. So apologies for that. Hopefully everything is still clear. And now, on with the show. Enjoy.
Hello, and welcome to Dice Punks, a tabletop role-playing podcast where we focus on playing full campaigns in less well-known systems. This week in episode 21, we find that even for demigods, when it rains, it pours. Hello and welcome. I'm Adam, your friendly neighborhood game master, and joining me are...
Hello, I'm Drew, and I'll be playing Dask Tyr, Regal of Nothing, and Guy, who has become an expert in falling.
Hi, I'm Robin, and I'll be playing Alyssa Crate, the harried and handsome Duchess of Fury.
I'm Dez, and I will be playing Romnet, the prophet of a now silent divinity, who might finally have had enough coffee.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Oh, me too.
Well, thank you guys. I'm excited. Let's get going. This means we'll start with any character stat growth, which... Is there any? I didn't think so.
I'm close, but not this session.
Everybody's still hoarding their nuts for the coming winter, I think.
Precious.
Well... We'll see where those eventually go. That means, Romnet, I think you have an XP roll. Good luck.
Yeah, no, first time.
Oh, wow, the streak is broken.
Alas. 025789.
Text Dice Punks to 025789. Don't actually do that.
Yeah, I don't think it would get you very much.
Get at that point. Yeah, we don't need any more text spam in the world.
No.
Given that, we can move directly on to our summary of last time, which I believe Dask has for us this time.
Certainly. Well, our guests from Cirtha had proven poor guests indeed when they incinerated Melis, I might add without warning, doing significant injury to Lissa and even more significant injury to Apatia in the process. Romnet regarded his coffee seriously, meanwhile. Apatia furthermore called the Cirthans liars, which, yes, probably. I discovered that miracles have, for lack of a better term, fingerprints, and am now unable not to see them. Apatia managed to heal herself and to heal Lissa a bit as well, and to render her shiny besides. Ilona, the healer whose blood Apatia had availed herself of, showed up after an interval with Romnet. We all met. Lissa managed to distract her from her rather extensive interest in Apatia, if only for a while. In his cups, literally I assure you, Romnet saw a vision of Yavin. Rimush and some of his attendants made their way for the gates. Still a bit vexed by the disappearances among the Cirthans, I divined recent deaths in Fermata and learned several variously useful and troubling things. Something about there having been 100 eternal deaths, and the tidbit that no outsiders have ever died in Fermata. Apatia suggested that perhaps Ia and Rimush had been shielding themselves from being divined, and that perhaps our count of Cirthans had never been off in the first place. Lissa knew somehow that we were being observed until she mentioned it, whereupon we were not, so far as we could tell. being observed any longer. And we realized we had to make our way toward the manifestation. So we went there. The well was silent. The big they seemed silent as well. So I plunged myself into the well, and to truly no avail. I learned quite a bit about falling, as I mentioned. I'm perhaps going to write a treatise on the subject, but nothing useful was learned about our current situation. We introduced Romnet to Mavia, in a manner of speaking, though much remains to be explained. And, last of all, as I tried to explain, I found myself in Uncle Melly's mind, looking northward, if I don't miss my guess, from the highest point in Lid Manor, surveying a besieging army at the walls of Theret. That, I believe, is it.
It is it, and that's actually where we pick up. I'm actually going to bring us back into this mid-vision. So, frozen moment in the heart of the chancel here. Mid-sentence, Dask has gone a little bit vague, trailed off, his eyes have unfocused. And Dask, you are seeing through Uncle Melly's eyes. He is looking northward from the highest point in Lid Manor, out over the impressive, but not maybe totally reliable walls of Theret. So, a little bit of geography. Theret is not right next to the Shadowed Lands, nor to the river dividing the Shadowed Lands from Taraxis, but that is the direction in which he is looking, and you can just sort of barely see along the coast from this height where the edge of the delta, where the river flows out into the sea, is. And the besieging army seems to go about halfway between out of arrow shot to that delta in this particular direction, and it fills in all the way around out of Uncle Melly's vision to his right, sort of around the landward side of the city. There doesn't seem to be any sort of blockade that he can see from his current vantage in the sea, which makes for a very strange siege indeed, since Theret, as much as any trading city in Taraxis, could certainly resupply by sea. But for the couple of moments where his head is still and facing this direction, you can see a couple of interesting things about this army that you can start to pick out. One, there are no fires lit, despite the fact that night is coming on quickly. And two, the figures that you can make out from this distance vary in size way more than human beings do. You can't make out details in the shadowed and silhouetted mass beyond that, but there are certainly things in that army that are bigger, and maybe smaller, but certainly bigger than humans. It is now in your hands. You know enough about this to yeet yourself out of Uncle Melly if you'd like, and you know the rules here well enough that you can take a few actions while you are with him, so to speak.
I think I say, and he would hear himself say in his own voice, who, what, why are these?
You feel Uncle Melly's hands grip the parapet of the tallest tower in Lid Manor, and you feel his teeth grit as he focuses outward and says, "Damn it all, boy. Can't you be a little bit more convenient with your timing? Well, if you are indeed working with a god, now would be the time to solicit that god's aid. We're not sure. They're not human. Not all of them, anyway. They don't seem to have siege engines or know how to conduct a siege, but they showed up last night. And by our best count, there are in excess of 100,000 of the things, though who knows, really. We assumed they came from the Shadowed Lands, but no one saw them arrive. We're making arrangements to be resupplied by sea. So, if you can help, then help, goddammit."
Yeah, that sounds like a plan. That doesn't come out as heroic as I mean it, but it's all I got, and I yeet out.
Right as you are saying that and yeeting out, you can hear from behind Uncle Melly and somewhat to his left a fairly sort of like middle pitch, relatively sort of rich woman's voice saying, Melissus, what are you? And then you eat out. Not one that you recognize at first, but as you regain your bearings, you think this was the voice of the woman that he was closeted with playing a strategy-based board game of some kind last time you interrupted him. So.
Yes, okay, so I'm back in the manifestation. I think I would try to resume the sentence that I was interrupted in, and I'm sure I'll fail miserably. But I think I was saying something along the lines of, "So this is the other being that is Lissa, but is not Lissa. This is Mavia, and it seems we may have established a fragile peace." And then I would check their faces to see if I'm making any sense.
How long
so
has
in
it
the
been?
interval of time, it's been about the amount of time that it required for those two lines, those two sets of dialogue to play out. So let's call it a minute, 90 seconds. What have the two of you been up to at that time?
Probably shaking Dask's shoulder.
Yeah, I'll probably just have, shot a concerned look at Lissa, asked if he's done this before, pat him on the cheek or something.
So when you finish resuming your sentence, Dask, you find that Lissa and Ramnet are variously trying to pat you out of it, and you deliver your line and then sort of catch up.
Yes, then I wasn't here. You knew that. As to where I was in the guise, the brain, the mind. Lissa can explain perhaps, or I can. Anyway, we can enter other people's minds. Have I mentioned this, Ramnet? It's kind of interesting, actually. But I was in my... Well, it's something it seems both of us can do. I'm not totally sure if everyone... This is not really the point at the moment. So I was in the mind of my uncle, and it seems that, well, the city of Theret is under siege by things that are not necessarily human.
Hold on. Did you say that the city is under siege?
Well, he said that what he said was they showed up, and they don't have siege engines, but they seem to be forming a sort of phalanx? Blockade? I suppose blockade might be the word, and their intentions are not clear. He seemed terrified.
That's a lot of
drinks. Mean, he was being... Indeed. He was being imperious. He was yelling at me, which means he's terrified. It could also just mean that he was speaking to me.
Ramnet begins to form intention to have words with Dask's family at some point.
Marvelous.
So...
Well, I know a lot is going on, but this may be a situation in which I would like to help.
Yes, I think it would be best if we want to assist, but also there's a lot going on. We're going to help your uncle, of course.
In the absence of the big they, we can still do everything we could do. Yes, have we tried? I mean, I defied physical logic pretty well in the well, but...
Out of curiosity, and out of character, do y'all have miracle points?
We are the worst for wear, miracle point-wise.
That's sort of what I thought.
Let me actually, just for the record, I am tapped in terms of aspect, domain, and realm. I have 3 points in spirit.
I have a soul point and realm. Thanks, Apatia.
We also haven't entirely recovered from our physical injuries.
Mm-hmm.
So,
correct.
all in all, as the kids say, oof.
Oof.
Yeah, oof summarizes it.
Pretty big oof. So, as Dask finishes his rumination on your abilities in the absence of the big they them else stairs, I'm going to rule that it is Romnet who sees the phenomenon first, although probably both of our Nobilis feel it kind of like a change in air pressure. Darkness is bubbling up out of the well, flowing over the sides and filling the heart of the chancel. It started while Dask was talking just now and is accelerating in pace. Immediate reaction from Romnet, if any.
Sort of make approximately the noises that I'm making and like point behind Dask toward the well. That seems pertinent.
Dask and Lissa, I'm assuming you turn to look.
Mm-hmm.
You see this
Yeah.
in its acceleration. Already the darkness it's like a solid fog. It behaves like fog, but it has none of the translucence or immateriality of fog. The darkness is absolute in this way. It is almost like the silhouette of a cloud bubbling up out of the well, and it is already throughout the heart of the chancel to knee height by the time you turn around. Immediate reactions to that.
Does it feel like anything against our legs?
Yeah,
No.
I will scoop up some of it if I can.
It does not interact with your hand at all.
That can't be good. I've got a bad feeling about this.
This may be related to
No,
whatever
please keep
Thomas
going.
was doing in the well.
Have we
Very rapidly, it is up to about chest height on non-Lissa people.
You should keep Anish Kapoor away.
So ankle height on Lissa, sure, got it. I test just a very simple miracle to see if I can create a bubble where the darkness doesn't touch us around the three of us.
You create the bubble, but it has no effect on the darkness. Your intent was clear, your miracle happened, but the darkness seems to ignore it. Now it is engulfing your field of vision for those of you who are not Lissa, and very quickly rising for Lissa herself.
Might we leave this place?
With respect to our lungs, does it interact like a solid or a liquid or a gas?
Does not seem to interact with you at all, other than occluding your vision and increasingly deadening your other senses.
Oh, we should leave. I probably offer my arms to the two shorter gentlemen just to make sure that
I not only take one arm, but I help Romnet find the other one.
Yeah, I will definitely be catching hold of Dask's other arm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Thinking that I can feel where Lissa is in a way that Romnet perhaps cannot, I make sure that we formed a chain.
you don't have enough miracle points. I was going to try to do. This may be a good I'm going to burn that one miracle point that I have. I'm going to do a lesser preservation of the light, specifically to the. Like I recall there being a narrow stairwell leading out of the manifestation, so I'm going to do a lesser preservation as a barrier to try to keep the darkness within.
Okay, you move towards that staircase, and as you pass through the plane from the heart of the chancel to the staircase, you enact this miracle, and the darkness ignores it entirely, like it is not there. And you run up the stairs with Dask and Romnet in tow, just ahead of the darkness, and you arrive in the confluence some time later, with the darkness spilling out of the door behind you, and find that it's too late. The darkness is already billowing at this level. It is not following you up the stairs, but rather coming up in a flat plane throughout Fermata. and it has arrived, and you have just enough time to think an alarmed thought before you are engulfed. Before seemingly everything is engulfed. Nobody lets go of anyone's arms, but sensation disappears entirely. And for an uncountable amount of time, because you have no sensation and you cannot measure time, you float in darkness. That said, it is not all unpleasant, because after some interval, there is something in the darkness, not a presence, not a body, not something to fear, but rather it's functioning as a sort of ether through which energy flows. It's invigorating. It is, in fact, life-giving. And after some amount of time, some unmeasurable interval, the darkness recedes all at once, and the three of you find yourself on the ground. No, on the floor of the confluence. No one else is around. You're not sure whether or not there was anyone in the confluence to begin with when you came out from the heart of the chancel. Lissa's probably the first to notice, though. Your injuries are gone. Your burns, your bruises, everything. Completely as though they never were. In fact, you feel great. You feel as though you've vacationed for a month. You don't remember feeling as rested or as energetic since your ennobling. It's a little disconcerting, but it's also extremely pleasant. This goes for Dask as well. Romnet, you feel energized, not in the jittery sort of chemical way that coffee can sometimes result in, but in the sense of having been well rested and just kind of feeling grand.
That never happens.
Our Nobilis, certainly not since you became the Prophet of Mott, no.
So, like I said at the top, Liz finally had enough coffee.
Indeed. Our Nobilis, you find yourselves fully replenished on miracle points and then some. So whatever your maximum miracle points in each of your attributes is, you're full up +1.
That's exciting. And we can take off all the shock damage too. And damage.
Shock and killing. Yes, all damage has been healed.
Look at you all.
That worked out.
Yeah, if Romnet had damage, this would be the case for him as well.
Of course. I do try to avoid it, though.
But if we probably... I take the briefest moment to be happy about that, and then I'm mostly just anxious that we're in the confluence.
So, and to be clear, with the miracle points, I think Lissa has it right on her character sheet. And,
let's get all the colors matchy.
That's fine, yeah. So whatever your like underlined sort of maximum is, go one beyond it for the number of miracle points you currently have. You have one.
I was doing that, but I was
miracle point.
For the listener, I was just using a different color.
I see.
So that I would know.
Wanted to make sure.
I figured this was not permanent. Like, this isn't a new maximum. It's just that I have another one now. Yeah, okay.
Yes. Yeah. Temporary miracle points are a big thing, and you currently have one in each attribute.
Okay.
It is probably, given all of this, Romnet who first realizes that there's actually something else different going on here. Because, Romnet, you are not a noble. You are not divine. But you can feel a little bit of divine power sleeping now within you. And just sort of turning your attention to it is enough to realize what exactly it is that you now can do. each of our player characters has received, as a boon from Mott, a new gift. Now, Ramnet didn't have one before, and indeed does not have any miracle points or divine attributes, but does have a divine gift, the gift of insight. Not entirely sure yet, Ramnet, how this will work, but you know that you now have this divine ability. It's an interesting thing. You haven't ever sensed your own soul before, but now you can.
So that's weird.
At least in this limited way. And it is. It's a little disorienting. For our Nobilis, it takes you a moment longer, but you also discover that, yes, no, your connection to the shard of Mott that sleeps in your soul has gotten, well, stronger, broader. Lissa, you feel glorious. No, specifically, you appear glorious when you wish to. Dask? You're not entirely sure, but something about being here in Fermata puts you at ease. There's just a feeling of ambient goodwill that seems to flow through you, where before it was, well, at the very least, much less pronounced. A little bit of self-examination will, of course, reveal these to be the gift Devoted Populace, in Dask's case, and Glorious in Lissa's.
Can I just go ahead and activate it for funsies?
Yeah, so Ramnet in particular, although Dask probably not protecting himself from Lissa's miracles, Lissa doesn't look different. Her eyes, her nose, her mouth, her hair, her features don't change. She doesn't grow larger. But she seems to exude this air of just joy and celebration. Her smile seems to glow. Her posture bespeaks a deep joie de vivre that seems irrepressible, irresistible from the outside.
So no change.
Probably actually very little change for Dask. Ramnet may be, sort of perceiving Lissa with a new depth of appreciation, although you probably are not unaware that it is got a miraculous dimension.
I mean, honestly, other than her inherent physique, I assume a great deal about Lissa is miraculous.
Seems relatively safe as an assumption. Now, here's one other thing. And this is one for the listeners at home that I am springing as a surprise on our players. As you look around at each other, one thing about each person's appearance has changed. You are allowed to pick this. What is the cosmetic change that Mott has given you?
Ooh.
Consider yourselves put on the spot.
Can it be like complimentary things?
I would ask that they be thematic, but certainly they can be complimentary.
Yeah, like it's going to be thematic, because Lissa always had something of a fanged smile, but that somehow seems a bit more pronounced now. And if you weren't mistaken, her gold eyes seem a little bit like the pupils have become slits, but surely that your eyes are just tricking you.
Most excellent. And I should note, these are permanent, so when you come up with your change, do note them on your character sheets.
Similarly, Dask has unruly hair, but it's now unruly in exactly the right way all the time. Whenever Dask speaks and tries to inspire, his hair and his beard move slightly as though he is in a perfect breeze giving that speech. When it should be still, it is perfectly still. When it should be neat, it is perfectly neat. And it seems to do whatever it does for you, the person he is speaking to at that moment. This change is not describable in terms of color or shape, but it is unmissable.
See, I'm having a bit of difficulty with this, because I already have Smoking Void Skull.
You do already have Smoking Void Skull.
It's a little tough to one up that.
I think instead that on the backs of my hand are matching closed eye symbols.
Oh, I do like that.
I love it.
I like that a lot.
Extremely good, though.
And that they seem to be formed of the same smoke. They're not tattoos. But they are
marvelous.
Just there.
Delicious. Excellent. I was very eager to see how you all would handle the curveball of something has changed about your character's appearance.
If mine is too subtle or too abstract, I can take another swing, but...
No, I like it, and I demand that you note it as part of the description of especially actions involving speaking to people in the future.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I'm going to say I notice the eyes of smoke appearing on Romnet's hands and just let out a sort of audible a noise of approval and to note that they've made an impression.
I will look down and, well, that's new.
Has this happened before? Is this what's causing everyone to appear differently?
I strongly suspect not, as, correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, this is the first time that a blackness has come out of the well that seems attributable to the Obsidian Government.
Yeah, has not happened before.
An absence, and yet darkness. The unmistakable sign of... and gifts that could only have come from... What is this? A presence and an absence.
It's seemingly in answer to your question, you hear a distant echo of Mott's voice. All three of you do. More in your minds than in your ears. And it says, "Not an absence, but a return." And then fades away.
That was shockingly clear.
That's a relief.
All things considered.
Is it, though?
I never thought I'd be happy for the big they them to be back, but thanks. Hey, good to hear from you, buddy. Thanks for letting us know you're still doing God things.
The door to the manifestation swings open, and it takes you a moment to recognize that what has entered is an acolyte, because you are used to seeing acolytes as this sort of nondescript, slightly androgynous, robed greenish figure. This figure is nearly a foot taller, and the skin has much more of a gray cast to it, although there are still notes of green. The overall effect is much less servile and, for lack of a better word, lightly decayed, much more graceful. But the robe is the same. In fact, it's the same length, only coming down to mid-shin now. The acolyte sees you and comes in and says, "We were to check on you, my lords, my lady. We are glad to find that you are safe and whole and very dashing."
I wink.
I cannot help but smile at that, and I say, "Thank you, Timothy." And a single lock of hair passes over my face in dashing way as I do.
The acolyte bows slightly in acknowledgement and then says, "The Great One has returned triumphant, and you have been accorded gifts. Please."
From whence have they returned?
The acolyte does something you've never seen an acolyte do before. It smiles.
How creepy is it?
That's a little bit subjective, but I don't know, 30% creepy?
Timothy.
I like the notion of creepy as a percentage.
What a charming smile! Where's this been the whole time?
Timothy spreads their hands, as if to say, what can you do? And says, the Obsidian God wishes you to know that they have triumphed over those who would have harmed them. Not permanently, but they have brought back spoils, and they expect you to do the same. The acolyte bows and
By any
backs away.
chance, before you go, by any chance, those who would do harm, are some of them, just throwing out some possibilities here, in Theret at the moment?
The acolyte tilts their head and says, we suppose that is possible, but our concern is here in Fermata. And they bow with a slight apologetic sort of slant to it, and then turn to proceed back out of the manifestation.
Our guests? That's not said aloud to the acolyte, just more to...
Yeah, to the group.
Yeah.
Yeah, I turn back to the group after an unmistakable nod of, as you were, Timothy. Well, guests. That moment of clarity certainly did pass. What do you think is required of us? I say, looking over to the well and not really expecting an answer.
For the record, you are in the manifestation. The well is hundreds of feet below you.
Understood.
Indeterminate people with us.
Well, I'm gesturing toward the entrance then. Yeah, sure. We all always know where it is, kind of.
Honestly, yeah, you could point to it from anywhere in Fermata.
That's comforting.
Well, if there are... Isn't it, though? If there are guests, are they likely to be back at our place?
We should check on them, because I imagine that the rising perfect darkness might have been a little bit startling. And then we should make our way to Theret.
Yes, I like this plan. Let's check in.
You exit the manifestation and immediately stop for a moment, because Fermatans are moving around in the square and in the streets nearby, and you recognize them as Fermatans, but also you don't recognize them at all, because basically no one looks like a normal human. You see people who are impossibly tall and slender, almost eel-like in their stature. You see people who are flitting around, minuscule, on various wings. You see a few people who are eyeless and instead seem to have antennae. You see a couple of people with odd growths on their necks that it takes you a minute to realize look kind of like gills. Everyone seems to be, if not pale, then certainly pastier than they were. And they don't seem to be reacting very much to these changes, except in a couple of cases. One or two here or there who seem to be a little bit alarmed.
Are there any themes among those who are alarmed, as far as the natures of their changes?
Not that you can detect from the top of the steps of the manifestation, at least. Seems perfectly arbitrary.
I very discreetly pull a shiny bauble out from my many jewels and necklaces and look at myself and then put it away, having not been surprised by anything that I've seen. I also...
You see that the shape of your pupils has changed somewhat.
I thought I had gills for a moment. I was terrified.
Rather than seeking anything shiny, I turn to both of them and say, do I have gills?
I will look at your neck, shake my head. You're fine.
After he says that, I'd be like, most certainly gills. And then I pass you the shiny bauble.
I pretend to know she was joking and to not look at it for nearly a second before looking and checking my neck thoroughly.
Your neck is clear, although your hair's looking good.
I can't help but notice that as well. I hand back the bauble. Do we see any faces? May be the wrong word. Can we tell if this is anyone we know among the Fermatans that we're seeing, even despite the changes?
You take a moment to scan the crowd. Let's see if I can make you roll for this.
Sure.
Sense scrutinize, please. 4 dice.
Alrighty. That is a pair of 2s.
Okay. Good enough to spot just at the periphery of your vision Farna, the healer you've used the services of before, coming out of a shop just sort of off of the plaza in front of the manifestation. And she looks much as she did before, a little sort of pastier looking. But it is clearly evident with her relatively sort of severely short, pulled back hair that starting from a little bit behind her ears and all the way down her neck, she has external gills like an axolotl.
That's adorable. I love axolotls.
Me too.
I love them all.
They're great. The effect...
There was recently an interesting post on Tumblr in which someone who actually knew the relevant language, which I believe is Notbottle, which I'm also probably butchering, but who gave a pronunciation guide of how to say axolotl, namely axolot.
I learned something today.
That's cool.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
I love them
I'll take a shot at that
axolotl.
sometime.
And
Yeah, I think the language you say now,
butchering that.
No, it was probably pretty close because like you don't say the L in Nawat either.
Yeah.
The language name is, I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, they rule, and it's cool.
Yes.
Like anyone who looks like one is fine by me.
To be fair, the effect on a human being who you are familiar with is a little uncanny, but, you know,
Sure.
they're probably pretty fetching as external gills go.
Oshlots, as I think we're calling them now, have those little like kind of false eye things. So I definitely pictured her also looking like a ditto for a second. But that passed.
Fortunately for her and you, she seems to have her original eyes still.
I breathe a sigh of relief, though no one would know why.
Do you?
No, that's not in character.
Do you think they wanted this change? Do you think it's something they like consented to?
Well, many seem unbothered, but consent, I mean, I hate to say it, but almost certainly not. We didn't consent to, I point to Lys's eyes, I point to Ramnet's hands, welcome though they may be, we had no choice in the matter. I know this is a bitter pill for Lyssa to swallow, but I also don't know how to soften it.
The sigh was very much in character. Hopefully the mic picked it up.
Mm-hmm.
I think we swallow that thought and keep making way for the manor.
Mm-hmm.
You head to the manor. Arriving. Let's see. Who enters first?
Let's say me.
Okay. Dusk. You push open the door, you take a single step in, and then you find yourself falling backward down the stairs and into the street with a sound as you impact, and a shivering, shuddering Apacia with wild eyes and hair is clinging to you.
I try to return the cling with a comforting squeeze and say, "Hello, are you all right? Has there been any unwelcome change?" I'm sort of inspecting the top of her head as best I can as I say this.
She tries for what feels like an eternity, but it's probably about 10 seconds to get a full word out, and then finally manages, "Where were you?"
Well, we'd gone somewhere you understandably didn't want to follow. We're back.
She laughs and it turns into sobbing.
I run down the stairs. Probably give her a big hug and say, "I'm sorry about all the darkness."
Seems like a note that you would leave on somebody's car.
I'm sorry about all the darkness to come would be the
That sounds like a threat.
Right. Apatia is slowly calming down, but she is not entirely able to speak coherently just yet.
I resist the urge to nothing out her emotion, though it is a physical effort. All the comforts I offer are normal, bodily, friendly comforts.
Can I trigger my gloriousness again?
It seems to help a little bit. She slowly sort of like finds her breath and she says, What took you so long?
How long were we gone?
She gives a shaky laugh and she says, How is there any way to tell here? Days and days and days and days, and there was nothing, and she just starts sobbing again.
It's the least of comforts, but my hair envelops her in just the right way, absorbs what tears it should, does not choke, but offers a comforting presence.
I'm distressed by your sentient hair.
We haven't established whether it's sentient or prehensile, but it's, you know.
It could be both.
Sure.
Your hair is to Ghibli hair as Ghibli hair is to real hair.
I probably stutter out, days and days? Like, it couldn't have been that long.
She slowly masters herself and sort of pushes herself up off of Dask and sort of like uses her sleeve to wipe her eyes and nose and shakes her head and says, I really have no way of knowing. There's not day or night here, but it was a very long time of nothing. It was like being back by the well, but so much more. When I finally had floor beneath me again, all I could do was lay there, and then I heard the door open. She looks a little sheepish and takes a sort of like effort to straighten herself and gives a small bow toward Dask and says, I'm sorry for tackling you.
You have nothing to apologize for. We're sorry for leaving you. And for all of it.
Yeah, we're sorry. We had no idea what was happening with the well, and the darkness flooding. I'm so sorry.
You hear from just on the other side of the manor's foyer, Ia's voice. What's this now? As she sort of walks up and sort of peers through the door at this gathering. She looks kind of haggard. You saw her not that long ago by your own experience, but if you didn't know any better, you would guess that she was a mortal who hadn't really slept in the better part of a week.
Are you well?
She sort of shrugs one shoulder and says, I suppose. Perhaps breakfast is disagreeing with me. I have taken somewhat, infirm, perhaps. 'Tis unusual. Nothing like this has happened to me since I was a mortal. But perhaps it is being in another's chancel. She again shrugs a shoulder and says, Is your guest well? Peering at Apatia. Apatia, for her part, sort of hunches over a little bit as though she is shrinking away from a blow.
She's a bit the worse for wear. In addition to the recent happenings, I believe she's still recovering from... I attempt a pantomime of a person exploding in a burst of sunlight. It involves hands splaying in opposite directions.
Ea looks confused for a moment and says, yes, well, she does seem a delicate sort. I shall take to my chambers, I think. If you have need of me, send word. Otherwise, I shall rest until I feel recovered. And she moves in a way that she probably intends to be stately, but comes off as sort of a fatigued shuffle.
To her retreating back, I imagine, I say, let us know if you have need of anything. We hope that you recover soon.
She makes a surprisingly gracious gesture over her shoulder with one hand, but does not reply verbally.
I turn my attention back to Apatia, and, make the gesture of putting my arm around her. She could easily duck out of it if she wanted to, but just trying to kind of stabilize and provide support.
She leans into it, but she's frowning after Ea, and she mutters, I wonder... She didn't seem like she went through what I went through. She talked about breakfast and Melis being this morning, but it's been far too long. What's going on?
Has it been...
I will make a gesture suggesting the Cone of Silence be implemented again.
Do I need to roll to see if I understand that? I think I probably do. Yeah,
I think you could make a character decision there.
I think I would. I think I would. At this point, we have a relatively robust understanding of this kind of thing. And if anybody would understand what it viscerally feels like to lower the Get Smart cone in Dask's terms, it might be Romnit. So yes, I invoke the Cone of Silence.
The Cone of Silence is duly invoked.
I think that what may have occurred as, well, Melis. Was it Melis or Melis?
Melis with an L.
Thank you. Otherwise, very, Mowage vibes there.
Don't give me ideas.
That blessed Nobilis.
I've already made that speech at multiple weddings.
Yeah.
But
I have been vetoed every time I have been officiating a wedding and have suggested it, so good on you.
I mean, once it was for the actual thing, once it was just Mowage. Now that I have your attention, please put your cameras away. In any event, Melis was in the well. I suspect that was some part of the fight that our patron was alluding to, and I suspect that their victory is at least part of what has resulted in Ea's diminishment. I don't know for sure, though, obviously.
I have that feeling, too. That would explain why she did not experience the same thing we did.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking down at my hands as though I've just thought of something, and I'm saying days and days. Days and days. And just for a moment, I go back into Uncle Melly's head. My intention, to be clear, is to see whether the situation in Theret has changed.
Uncle Melly is standing near the docks. He's looking out on what seems to be as busy a day of trading as you have ever seen. You can tell from the tension he is carrying in his body that he is stressed, frustrated. He is watching crates get unloaded off of ships, and as he looks at each ship in turn, you can see that their standards are from almost every other trading city in Taraxis. It's rare to see a trading fleet of this type, and it's rarer still to see every ship in the harbor being unloaded. As he stands there, his tension spikes as a messenger in the livery of the Kelevan family trots up and assumes a polite but officious posture. Uncle Melly, gritting his teeth, produces a heavy purse of coins and hands it to the man, who bows deeply and without a word trots away.
This seems very normal. My god, my god, may have shown up then.
Are you saying this with Uncle Melly's mouth?
Oh yeah. Once the messenger is all the way gone and he's, no one would hear him talking to himself necessarily.
He stiffens all at once and then murmurs to you with a lot of tension in his voice. Nephew, how kind of you to finally show up. Fortunately, the creatures seem to have no sense of naval blockade, and we've been able to resupply, but it is bankrupting our family. He takes a deep breath, and you feel him force himself to relax. He says, good of you to check in, but we have been paying for provisions for the city to be brought in by ship from other cities in Taraxis. We haven't seen evidence of siege engines yet, but there are large pavilions that are going up day by day. We're not sure what they're for. Whatever these creatures are, they don't let anyone in or out of the city by land. We've lost a number of messengers. I will not ask currently what took you so long, but if you are finally ready to render assistance, well, it has been one of the worst months of my life, and I would appreciate it.
I nearly say month. I also nearly repeat one of Grandfather Krias's jokes about how the Kelevan family will always gouge you. I don't say either of those things, though. What I say is, we're on our way. And then I yeet.
I like how that is now a technical term.
We've established it's an in-world term at the very least.
Yeah. Uncle Melly is in the process of saying, about damn time, when you yeet out.
By a mortal estimation, I say, it's been a month.
Month?
I would also remind us that in Taraxis, a month is like 60 days.
I'm also going to check on... this can wait, but Lissa's going to panic and check on Varric at some point.
I mean, it's up to you when it happens.
Rumnut
so you
will
just let me know.
mutter to himself days and days and days. And God damn. Well, I suppose that is the operative thing here.
I'll probably say excuse me for a moment and then check on Varric.
As you yeet into Varric, you hear me beginning to explain how the yeeting works to Rumnut.
Lissa, you jump into Varric's senses, and he is in the process of looking at himself in a mirror. He has always been a burly fellow with a lot of hair. His beard, though, his hair is still hair. His beard now seems to be moss and lichen, and he is inspecting it in the mirror with an air of mystification.
Oh, Varric, I am so sorry.
Your friend's
He
an
jumps
ant.
and says, "Oh, is that you, lass? Well, it's just going grey anyway, I suppose." And he sort of turns his head one side to the other, looking in the mirror, and sort of tilts it up to look at it. He says, "Oh, I don't know, it seems relatively dignified."
It does suit you, but it's not anything that you asked for in coming here.
He shrugs his shoulder and says, "Well, aye, but lots of things we don't ask for happen to us, lass, and you should have seen my neighbour. Had some kind of feelers on his head. Pretty confused, although he seemed to be coming around on it, as it seemed he could smell emotions or something. I don't know. It was odd."
That is disconcerting. If you want to get out of here, just say the word. But there is some kind of siege occurring in Theret, so I suspect we're going to go make sure that Dask's uncle is okay, and then I can get you out of here.
He says, "Oh, lass, I don't have anywhere else to go. I like the people here, even if they're less people by the day." And he chuckles to himself. And says, "You know, it's growing on me." And then pauses and chuckles to himself. Do you get it, lass? It's growing on me.
I liken that joke a lot.
I miss seeing more of you, lass, but I know you're doing important work. Don't worry about old Varric. He'll be fine.
If you're sure, but remember that if you ever want to get back out into the real world and under the sun, you just say the word.
He says, "Oh, I suppose maybe one day I'll want to, but you know, this isn't the worst thing that's happened to me in the last couple months, so we take it in stride, eh?"
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna go check on Dask's uncle and whatnot, but you take care of yourself.
Aye. I'll let you know if anything is up.
I exit his mind.
Okay. You exit his mind. You do not find yourself back in your mind, though. It takes you a moment, but the perspective that you are seeing is looking out of a window at a landscape that is familiar until it's not. The window itself actually also becomes familiar the longer you look at it. It is in your parents' home. The landscape outside is familiar. You've looked out this window yourself. Grassy, rolling hills should be off into the horizon. But after the first row of hills, instead you see nothing but sand and dunes.
I am going to look down at myself, because from my experience with Varric, I know that if I say anything, it's going to come out of this person's mouth. And maybe trying to catch a glimpse of my reflection in the mirror, or not the mirror, but the window, or any other thing I can do that requires subtle movements will be what I strive for right now.
Interesting. Very interesting. Let me see. In this case, I think, body plus coordination, 5 dice.
Okay. Oh, 0 pairs.
Oh, no. So you attempt to look down at yourself, but you can't control the body that you're in. However, whatever attempt you made does not go unnoticed, and the body that you're in jumps slightly, and you hear the voice of the body, a familiar voice. You hear the voice of the body that you're in mutter under its breath, "What the hell?" And you recognize the voice as well. You are in the body of your sister. You are in the body of Rowena.
Oh, I kind of want to leave, but I also need to know what's going on. What happened here?
You hear her voice say it, and she stiffens. And her voice drops the sort of affected upper-class accent for a moment, and the farmer from the Vales comes through for just a moment as she semi-drawls, semi-twangs. "What in tarnation's going on?" Who's there?
So this is something I hadn't really decided on, but does my family? I imagine that they're kind of like many farmers. They do sort of work and have a religious aspect to it.
So, yeah, I would say that your family does a lot less of the actual working part, but puts money toward the religious observances as a show of wealth and sort of social clout.
And to clarify, when I say work, I mean like those old Appalachian-style rituals that are kind of like performative extensions of religion.
Sure, and the response kind of remains the same. They are kind of distant from the actual participation because it seems very, well, plebeian and old-fashioned, but they also really want to be associated with the sort of pomp and circumstance, and so they, send servants to participate and they donate money, but they don't really get into it themselves. They try to be, observers.
I'm going to say, I am what happens when you don't smudge your doorways.
You find yourself yeeted back into your body as roaming fits.
The laugh is absolutely in character too.
As you're in your own body, you're hearing me say, so they speak in their own voice and they're not always happy about it. Uncle Melly, you might actually like when you, and then I noticed that Lissa is back.
Yeah, Lissa begins laughing.
And then I kind of cut my hand around my stomach because it's a belly laugh, and oh, Varric's fine. Yeah, he's got a very stately moss beard.
And what are you laughing
sounds
about,
like it.
then?
That sounds like it would suit him, but yeah, it doesn't sound hilarious.
Oh, he was making a joke. He said it's growing on him, and I told him I liken the joke a lot.
And how apparent is it to the rest of us that you're lying?
That's going to be a roll, actually. If you're trying to detect the lie, that's going to be a roll.
Sense empathy?
Yes, it's sense plus empathy to detect the lie, and it is charm plus lie in order to conceal it.
Okay.
So that is a pair of nines.
Nice. No matches over here.
Oh, pair of nines.
What?
Pair of nines and pair of nines. Tie goes to the defender.
Yep.
As far as you can tell,
Excellent.
She's giving you the truth.
Nicely done.
Not lying, per se.
Yes,
yeah, but I made Romnet roll for his lie of omission, so...
Yeah.
So you shared the joke and then you had to leave.
Yeah, Varric is a fun guy, but I couldn't stay there too long.
I take it back. I need more coffee.
Apatia seems genuinely confused by the wordplay.
Oh, come on, Romnet. Branch out.
I will poke Dask in the side.
Do you not mycelium what he did there?
This is my life.
This
now.
is your life. You gave Varric a weird beard.
I have no one to blame but myself.
You should have known that things would have gotten a bit hairy. At any rate, Varric kind of filled me in on some talk. Let's check on Uncle Millie, but I think the outside world might have been impacted by whatever's going on here too.
Certainly. I mean, whatever else is true, Theret is in need of assistance. It seems that they're still blockaded by land, which means they can only resupply by sea, which I won't give you a dry economics lesson about the nature of trade cities, but it makes for some unhappy merchant families and some other very happy ones.
It's
but the happy
expensive
ones
in
aren't
an
mine.
extortionate fashion.
Yeah, what he said.
Paisha, would you prefer to come with us?
She nods vigorously.
You would think
Of
that I
course.
might be able to come with you.
Would you like to?
I don't know how long it's been since I've left. No, I will phrase that I don't know how long it's been since I've been not here.
It also gives you like a queasy feeling to talk about leaving, but not one that you think would necessarily prevent you from doing so.
Okay.
Sort of like how people who get motion sick can still get on a boat.
Right. I suspect it's intended that I am not tied here, but certainly connected.
It's probably at about this time, just being kind of on the doorstep as you are, that Apatia, if no one else, will notice that Fermata doesn't actually look exactly the same. It's all still obsidian and darkness and silver limning and canals, but where before the architecture was relatively
Brutalist?
rough-hewn, relatively cyclopean, now, other than the manifestation, which is entirely unchanged, everything is relatively graceful looking. Even the exterior manner, the floor plan hasn't changed, but the way it presents to the street is much more delicately carved and shaped, with curving lines and sort of swooping features. Everything seems much less rough.
I wonder if the big they is taking cues from us.
I have lost count of the number of times I've said the words bright and soft to Timothy. Maybe the message was received after a fashion.
It's an improvement, at any rate. I can appreciate the craftsmanship, even if it's not forged.
And it is impressive.
To the gates.
As to the matter at hand, you are both extremely welcome. I must emphasize that we have every reason to believe that this will not be an especially safe venture.
Apatia gives you a bit of a smile and says, "Is there such thing as a safe one?" Her teeth are very sharp.
I return the smile, though of course my teeth are quite dull by comparison, and say, not lately.
I also return the smile, and my teeth are sharp.
I will shrug.
A couple of them are.
Yeah.
I think the four of us make our way to the gates then, yeah.
I was going to ask, are we going inside to like supply or prepare, or are we just going directly to the gates?
I mean, I would need to go home to pick up a blade.
We can do that.
But I think Lissa always rolls with Electo, and I always roll with my Mombele, so we're probably ready to make for Ramnet's place and head for the gates.
Electo is not neglected.
Right. Indeed not. So, you pull the doors closed, you head toward Ramnet's place, a little bit of a caravan, and thence to the gates.
I will ask Timothy, if we come across a Timothy, to let Avine know that Ia may yet need seeing to.
The acolyte that you find bows and says, "She will know as soon as she awakens, and perhaps sobers up."
And what changes
Emphasis on
came
the
upon
perhaps. I like his question better. What changes came upon her?
The acolyte sort of tilts their head and says, "Why, she got drunk."
her? I was more seeking to know the nature of the changes that might have accompanied the return of the Obsidian God.
The acolyte nods as though they understand the question and says, "She got drunk."
Permanently?
The acolyte sort of looks quizzical and says, "It is not presumed so."
I should hope not.
The acolyte bows and then moves about whatever business they were going about in the first place.
Thanks, Timothy.
Are we proceeding to the gate, or are we going to check on Aveen?
It would probably be wise to check on Aveen. I'll give everyone else the option, though.
I think we're sticking together at this
Well,
point.
Yes.
right.
Okay.
So the question is, are we or aren't we?
I think we should, at least out of courtesy, to let her know that we are embarking.
I think we should. And if Uncle Melly has waited a month, which it seems he has, unless he's being dramatic, but let's assume he has, he can wait another 10 minutes.
All right. So you set off in search of Aveen. So in what way are we attempting to locate Aveen?
I'll take us to that house.
Well, Ramna, yeah, he had a vision, right? So we know.
True. Now, you don't know where the house she was at is. You know you'd recognize it if you saw it, and she doesn't seem to be there, right? You saw in your vision her leaving it.
Fair.
Could do
Can I
a
divine
realm
for her?
miracle, divination.
Yeah.
Okay. As a matter of fact, Aveen is without an Octoritas, so if she is in Fermata, yes, you can locate her that way. And so all it takes is a moment of concentration and the invocation of a miracle, and she's at the nightcap.
We probably could have figured that out without miracles, but all right, to the nightcap.
The thing about miracles, from what I understand, is that they're efficient.
Highly, if occasionally unpredictable.
So you have to pass through the canal, as you are currently in the Quiet City, and you head to the Riotous City, and you head to the nightcap.
What does it look like to
And-
me as I am passing through the canal now that I can, as you say, see the truth?
As you are approaching it, you see your own reflection, and as you pass through the plane of the water, you feel your body react to sort of the wheeling around of the center of gravity, and basically, if you've ever reached into a sock and turned it inside out, the whole city does that.
Jesus. That's disconcerting.
But then it's passed, and you are ascending the stairs out of the canal and into the Riotous City, and it's not very far to the nightcap, where you find a relatively sparsely populated common room with the barkeep who helped Lissa find Kea the time when she was thrown through a window. Sorry, Kea. But, well, I say thrown through. She jumped through, but that was my fault.
Your fault.
Yeah, that barkeep is there. Kea is actually also there. And interestingly, she has, well, also changed. She looks the same, except for two things. She has relatively long, pointed ears that seem to have moved up a little bit from their normal human position. That is much less noticeable than the other factor, which is that her whole body, everywhere you can see skin, phosphoresces slightly in a sort of eerie blue color. But she's just bustling around the bar, handing out drinks to the few patrons that are there. One of whom is Aveen, seated at the bar, with her head down on her arm, turned to the side, and very occasionally pushing herself up just a little bit to take a swig out of a stone mug.
Well, I'm going to go say hi to Kea.
Hello, Aveen.
I assume, I'll be Robnet's arm candy throughout the following.
All right. Lissa, you head over to Kea. Moxie is following her around as she moves around the bar. And when she turns to see you, she lets out an adorable little squeal and runs up to you and gives you a big hug. And says, oh, I'm very glad to see you, my lady. It hasn't been that long, but, well, it's also been a long time.
It has been. I like the glow.
She looks down, she goes, oh, mercy. I'm glowing, aren't I?
You are.
Hadn't noticed that. Well, that's nice. I don't suppose I'll ever be in the dark again. And she gives you a big hug.
I return the hug and say, it looks like the Big Fae did you a favor. Seems to have taken note of Moxie.
She nods fervently and says, oh, it's so good to know that the Obsidian God looks out even for the Lightward. And she looks a little fervent for a moment and then shakes it off and is like, oh, but I'm at work and have a seat anywhere you like. I'll bring you a drink in a moment. And she goes to deliver her tray to two gentlemen seated at a table in the back.
I head back over to the rest of the gang.
And the rest of the gang has been doing what while this exchange
Walk up
goes
to
on?
approximately the side that Aveen is facing, ? Hello, Aveen.
Her eyes open blearily, and she sees you and says, oh, hello, Prophet. So nice of you to drop by. And then burps.
I'm mostly here to let you know that I will be assisting our nobles outside the city for a time that is hopefully not terribly, terribly long. But it seemed that I should at least give you the courtesy of notice before vanishing.
She waves a hand at you, and you notice that her fingers are no longer tipped in fingernails, but in dark, blunt claws. They remind you of a mole. And she goes, oh, of course. Don't often play with your boyfriend. It's fine. I'll manage things here. It's all good. Who even... And she puts her head back down.
I'll come find you when I'm back from the war.
You do that. She takes another swig and lays her head back down.
Before we depart, I pat her shoulder and say, from the war.
She doesn't react immediately, but as you are moving back from her, she raises a clawed middle finger in Romnet's direction, and it sort of wavers there for a second and then falls to her side, and she starts to snore softly.
Am I standing when that occurs near her?
Yeah, you've walked up in that.
I don't know the context, but I very just quietly take her hand and put it back down on the table when she tries to fuck him off and say that's rude. And then do a
These are facts.
lesser creation of furious joy, because I see that she's in a rough state, and not everyone acts like themselves when they're drunk, so I'll let their rudeness slide this one time.
Okay, all right. Let's get a command inspire for your success rate at inspiring the kind of fury you like.
That's going to be a pair of 4s once my master die is taken into account.
Indeed. So you do a miracle to inspire furious joy, and as her snores start to emanate from her seemingly fully passed out form, she does seem to relax somewhat into the bar. The barkeep sort of looks up at you and says, that'll be the first piece we've had all day. Well, I'll be sure she's all right when she wakes. Milady, my lord. Lord Prophet.
I put a handsome
Thank you.
amount of coins on the bar for them and smile and wink
He
at them.
nods at your placement of the coins and looks slightly alarmed at your nod and wink, but gives you a smile, like kind of questioningly, and goes about, kind of tending bar.
It's the teeth, isn't it? So off to the gates?
I think off to the gates.
Oh, did we
now
speak
see if
by...
I can pass through.
Mhm.
I think you already swung by around.
Oh, perfect.
Yes.
And you maybe let Kea know on your way out that you'll be gone for a little while, but that you'll check on her again when you come back, and to stay in the light until then. So you head to the gates. The plaza features a new statue.
Oh boy.
This one has a very large Lissa with the bottom half of a snake and sort of a manic grin, fangs displayed, sort of reaching up, sort of hands outstretched, almost sort of like mad scientist style. And beneath her hands are a relatively normal-sized Dask and Ramnet, their hands clasped, looking into each other's eyes, their expressions sort of unreadable, as wind seems to blow from the gates back into the city, moving their sort of hair and garments in that direction.
I'm not sure this is accurate.
I was going to say, is that bad? Yeah.
No, you're much more
It is
handsome in person.
Very interesting rendition of your Smoking Void Skull in stone, in that your smoking hair and your smoking eyes are sort of like lighter veins through the obsidian. It's a really interesting effect.
Nice.
It's a somewhat handsome, if inexplicable, rendition.
I just don't get why they went for the bottom half of the snake. Like, my thighs are some of my best features.
We should try and find the sculptor, if indeed there is a sculptor, and have a word sometime.
Yeah.
This area, as before, is relatively sort of bustling, and again, all the people seem to be slightly less human than they were before. In fact, a couple you see are now these sort of like towering, seemingly eyeless forms, very bulky, very strong looking, kind of wicked claws, but they're moving around as though they're doing just normal Fermotan everyday stuff, and others of course have various nocturnal and troglodyte features kind of pasted onto them. In fact, you get a glimpse of Ilona with some bat-like wings growing out of her back, otherwise unchanged. Apatia, who has been sort of just taking everything in as she follows you around, sort of puts Lissa between herself and Ilona so that you can make a clean escape, as it were. As you approach the gates, they bang open as you come up to them. Are we passing through directly, or are we making any sort of interaction with the spirits of the gates?
I trust that they will take us in the right place, but I'm probably going to do a lesser creation of Furious Joy, and make them feel very furiously happy about letting Ramnet out of the city.
Command Inspire.
Yeah. Two fours again.
All right. They seem to respond more or less as you had in mind, and spring open at your approach. You pass through, and you feel that sort of falling sensation before the four of you are deposited
At the moment we begin to fall, my hand grasps Romnet's, and if he's getting held back, so am I, is the thought in my head.
Okay. Yeah, the four of you are deposited in the sort of front plaza inside the gates of Lid Manor. You have exited the front door, the main entrance of the household, and you are standing amidst the topiary and the cobbled drive leading up to it, and the statuary of the various patriarchs and matriarchs of the family, and the marbled columns. It is early morning. No one seems to be in evidence. And Romnet, you pass through with an extremely queasy feeling. You have to lean on Dask a little bit when you get to the other side. But it allows you to pass through, and the queasiness subsides relatively quickly once you're on solid ground again. Good. You suspect that there is perhaps a limit to the amount of time you can be gone from Vermata, but you are allowed to leave. It is interesting to see the sun again, because you can remember seeing it before, and yet it feels entirely new to you.
Yeah, we'll look up and just sort of blink at it, and then realize, no, I probably shouldn't be staring at this thing, and look away from it and continue blinking.
So here you are, all in Theret. Apatia immediately goes stiff. And as you turn, she says, "It would appear that I have gained a sister. Oh my."
A sister?
Congratulations. I hope.
She chuckles nervously and says, "I hope so too. Having exited your chancel, I can feel her. I can't say exactly where, but she turns in the direction of the sea, more or less in the direction of Diamakor, and says, "It would appear that Mother Nyx has selected a new Nobilis to join me in serving her." She seems not entirely excited about this.
Is this the first sister you've had?
My whole life I have been Mother Nyx's only prophet. I wonder what she's like.
My hope is that she's as kind and wonderful as you are, but if not, you have an adopted family here.
She chuckles a little bit and says, "I appreciate the thought, but, well, now that I'm not in your chancel anymore, I am no longer as autonomous as I was. Mother Nyx is distant, but I can feel her again. And, I doubt she is pleased with me." She nods and she says, "But I think I am where I need to be." And she sort of squares her shoulders, and at that moment, the gate at the end of the carriage drive swings open, and Dask, you see Uncle Melly striding in. At his side is the woman that you saw closeted with him the one time and heard the second time. Lissa, why is your grandmother here?
Mm-hmm. I try to hide.
I noticed that... Okay, hold on. How do you indicate that you're trying to hide?
I was going to say, what exactly do you do?
I'm going to try to duck behind a topiary or something. Whatever is nearby that could ostensibly make me less noticeable.
I make an attempt to catch you by the wrist, and I said, if you'd like, I could probably hide you absolutely.
Please.
All right, so presuming that I don't have to get through Lissa's Toritas, and she's consented to this.
Yeah, with her permission, you do not have to.
Yeah, this is an extremely a simple matter, I think, but essentially, there's a rippling bubble of nothing all around her, so that when you look, it's not the same as when I assume the aspect of nothing, which is to say you don't see some specific thing that's obscure to me. You would see nothing at all. It would seem as though space continues. You might see, again, a ripple as though it were a very hot day, but nothing else.
Okay. All right. You think you have managed to hide Lissa. Melissus sees you, Dask, and sets his shoulders. Lissa, your grandmother, sort of glances at him and then falls into step kind of behind and to one side of him. and it's been a minute since you've seen her. Her hair is now completely a steel gray, falling sort of to just below her chin in sort of loose waves. She's tall, but not as tall as you are, and dressed more finely than you remember seeing her. But her look of determination is as intact as it ever was. Dask, this woman gives you the same vibe as Creasus Tyr used to give you, sort of before his infirmity. And they both sort of stride towards you, and as Uncle Melly comes within range, he says, "Well, praise the Obsidian God, I suppose. Glad you finally showed up. But not in a position to refuse any help. So, wait, where's your betrothed?"
That almost catches me off guard, but I ignore the comment completely. I make a bow. I open my jacket slightly as though to show my Merchant's Guild crest, but don't actually show it. We're beyond that. And I simply present my good friend and capable compatriot Apatia from beyond the sea, and most especially my companion from beyond this realm of being, Romnet.
I probably
Uncle Melly looks at the both of them.
I probably subconsciously, at the mention of betrothed, reach for Apatia's hand. Just seeking who some tactile comfort from.
Apatia keeps her cool remarkably well. Apatia bows in the sort of Diamok fashion, and says, "It is a pleasure to make your acquaintance. Melissus, was it?" And Uncle Melly sort of looks at her and then looks over at Romnet and says, "I suppose I'm glad you brought allies, boy. Where's the Duchess, though? Is she around?"
She'll be arriving shortly.
I see.
I will.
She was a bit indisposed.
Offer the.
Would you mind? Yeah, go for it.
I will offer a firmly polite greeting of the sort that high-ranking types from one faction might offer to another without necessarily being certain of their precise intent.
Charm plus graces, my fellow.
Indeed. Except that it's charm plus
Which
fascinate.
for the listener... Ah, right. Yes, because of your troubadour past. So what would have been 2 dice becomes 3 plus a master die.
So the pair of 3s becomes 3 3s, becomes 3 7s.
Indeed. Uncle Melly sort of looks you up and down and says, "Well, Romnet, was it? You seem to know your way around high society. It's good to see you." And he shakes your hand firmly.
Does he react to any part of my everything?
Smoking Void Skull? Not at all.
Fascinating.
Suspiciously not.
Practiced diplomat.
Oh,
this
yes.
Guy. Sure.
For the record, the woman he's standing just ahead of is openly staring at you.
Do I, by the way, recognize Lys's grandmother at all?
You have seen her. She was closeted with Uncle Melly when she was playing board games.
Yes, and I asked that badly. Did I recognize her then from previous mortal life? I don't recall.
No.
Okay,
she
gotcha.
is
Similarly
unknown to you before having seen her playing board games.
Similarly,
Gotcha.
have I ever performed here?
You have probably been to Theret. You have certainly not been to this place, although you will recognize it as being in sort of the richer part of town.
Okay.
Can I take an action?
That's
certainly.
A
what is
question.
it you wish to do?
I would like to do a lesser creation of furious nausea in my Meemaw.
Damn.
That was, I must say, one of the great sentences in the history of history.
Before introductions get any further, you just know that feeling where you're suddenly sure you have to vomit.
Go ahead and roll command plus inspire, I guess.
Congratulations, you are inspiring your mother or your grandmother to puke.
2 10s.
2 10s. She immediately turns, looks absolutely mortified, and ejects her breakfast onto the cobblestones. She looks confused and horrified by this.
It's that classic critical success problem.
Melissus turns to Lys's Mima and goes, "Ilari, are you all right?" And Dask, he seems weirdly panicked for this, and she sort of waves him off and sort of takes some deep breaths and stands back up and says, "I think I'm all right. I'm not as young as I used to be. I suppose the wine last night must have gotten to me. Sorry for the interruption." Servants are scurrying out of the mansion to clean up the vomit.
This is probably the wrong moment to ask to be introduced.
Melissus says, "Of course, though, where are my manners? Sorry, it's been a month, as I'm sure you can imagine." And there's a little bit of recrimination in his tone as he says that.
I do my best to give him a look that both accepts the recrimination and also says, demigod stuff.
He adopts an officious posture and gestures rather grandiosely to Ilari and says, "May I introduce to you my nephew, Ilari Crate from the Vales. Ilari, this is my nephew, Dask Tyr, and his companions." And he motions to Apatia and to Dask.
Romnet.
I give the same officious merchantly bow, but I do the whole damn thing. She can see the crest if she wants to.
She gives a almost self-consciously rustic curtsy. It would be out of place here in Theret, especially in high society, but she has to know that, and does it anyway.
I will offer her a troubadour's bow.
Interesting. She actually seems a little bit taken aback by it, but she recovers quickly. And, sort of says, "Pleased to make your acquaintance. Dask, Ramnet, Apatia. Shall we," and she says this to Melissus, "shall we be about our business, then? If your nephew can help, he is certainly welcome, but the situation is quite urgent, I feel." And Melissus nods and says, "Now that you're here, nephew, you can certainly help us out. Come." And he gestures you officiously forward.
Can I take an action?
Had it?
Of course.
I would like to do a lesser creation of the furious need to pee.
I would only like to add that while she's doing all of this, I am out of the corner of my eye, making sure she stays concealed.
Out of curiosity, had it been mentioned that the two nobles are betrothed? To me?
Melissus had asked where Dask's betrothed was.
Right, and had I been aware...
But that's all the information
Had I been aware before then of that status?
Not to my knowledge.
Didn't you overhear it almost as a joke that like Lyssa was saying, and we pretended to be betrothed, and Romnick gave him a look? Am I remembering that wrong?
No, I honestly cannot remember, which is why I had...
definitely never been fully explained what the hell we were up to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Correct. Let's say it may have been mentioned.
Okay.
It was mentioned that as a joke.
Sort of a humorous capacity.
Yes.
Okay. Should I...
So, command inspire.
She's so excited for this role. Let me tell you, listener.
I don't even know what...
It's not a critical success, but a pair of 8s. So hopefully she won't wet herself.
Good lord.
She said, slightly hoping that maybe she would.
I don't understand why you hate your grandmother, but damn.
Ilari stiffens and says very rapidly to Melissus, "Pardon me, my lord, I must use the privy, but I'll meet you at the meeting room," and dashes off before any response can be given. Uncle Melissus looks kind of confused, but shrugs and goes on, leading the rest of you. And I assume here that you're following, Lissa.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to murmur under my breath. Can we talk for just a moment?
Dask hears that.
Yeah. This to my uncle. I say, we'll join you in just a moment. We've arrived by, and I spread my hands in a way that I think is going to be grand, but is almost certainly stupid, by divine means, and we'll just need a moment to adjust ourselves to this realm.
I will just look at you and just raise my eyebrows, and intending to produce a charm plus graces roll to actually effectuate this, I will explain that we traveled from a point without light through darkness to another point without light, and that takes a toll.
Go ahead and roll that charm roll for me, Ramnet. Just
3 5s becomes 3 7s.
Sure enough, Uncle Belly seems to like you. He sort of nods and says, "Right, of course. Well, my nephew knows where the council room is. So,
we shouldn't be long.
Quick as you can." And he continues on. And the four of you, with Apatia, are left sort of in the hallway. Ramnet, this is probably, including the manner in which Dask and Lissa live in Fermata, the richest, most opulent surrounding you've ever found yourself in. Marble, carpets, tapestries, stained glass, sculptures, paintings. It's extremely posh.
A place I would have possibly literally killed to play.
Indeed.
So I think before we fall into the council room, I see what I do not make Lissa visible, but I do ask what's going on.
There's no easy way to say this, but your uncle, remember what I said about how our family should never meet?
Oh.
Yeah.
Great.
Oh.
We're not, but we need to just clarify the betrothed thing at the first possible convenience, and
could you clarify a bit that for me?
It was a contrivance of convenience in a moment when we needed to convince my uncle to provide us with a ship, and we have not yet had the opportunity to disabuse him of the notion.
I assumed that he knew we were joking.
I mean,
I'm never quite certain what he believes when I speak.
You can let him know that the Obsidian God frowned upon the match. I could let him know that the Obsidian God frowned upon the match.
Oh,
that might be better. He likes you.
Just say that. Please say that when Mima's not around.
Would she frown on which part of it? The Obsidian God part? All of it? This is a lot. It seems it's too late for our families not to meet, but it may not be too late for whatever you were worried about coming next.
I just say it when Mima's not around. We've got that.
Say it when she's not around.
Yeah, she's using the restroom, I imagine, with some urgency, so we have some time.
I then sort of jump as though I've been struck by something, put my hand around my shoulder and say, but I must clarify. There was no betrothal, actually.
I didn't figure there was. I was simply trying to ascertain the nature of the ruse.
Slapdash. Though effective. Lissa's very good at this. You're very good at this. Sometimes I wish I were better at this.
Practice.
To be fair, also, it was entirely my fault. He said no, I said yes as a joke, and then failed to follow through.
But fine,
Well,
it
to be
was
clear,
called off for...
I'm very pleased that you did not follow through on a betrothal to my boyfriend.
I believe all present are pleased about that.
Yes.
Apatia has been looking at each given speaker this whole time, grinning like a
Just
maniac.
following along like a tennis ball.
Yeah, and she's sort of like very laughingly says, "Well, I think you would be quite the handsome couple, but could not possibly be more mismatched." And she sort of wraps her arms around Dask's arm.
Still, effectively single.
Let the record show.
Apatia keeps one arm on Dask's arm and then winds the other one around Lissa's arm and goes, "More for me, then."
A lot more.
You should possibly go to the meeting chamber. Do you intend to become visible?
Suppose I should rip the bandage off sooner or later. Just don't think less of me, that my family is difficult.
You've met some of my family. I don't think you have anything to apologize for in terms of difficult families, and more to the point, the only family that matters is the one we've chosen here. The rest, it's dust, really.
I don't
You're
think
right.
you'll be meeting my family, so it's all fine.
That was an interesting comment that we should explore later. But for the moment, let's cancel a betrothal and break a siege.
I'm going to make myself as glorious as
Cancel
possible as soon as she shows back up.
Okay, I remove the veil so that Lissa
All right.
could be seen.
The four of you proceed, following Dask, to the council chamber and enter. Uncle Melly's face lights up when he sees Lissa. And one of the first things that you notice... Well, actually, it's going to vary from person to person. Dask, one of the first things you notice upon entering the council room is that Croesus is in attendance, seated at the head of the table. Liver-spotted, papery skin, thin, wispy white hair, hunched back, the whole decrepit 9 yards, but he's seated at the head of the table, glaring directly at his hands where they are resting on the table in front of him. A large stack of papers in front of him. The whole family is gathered here, apparently, at least. You can't see any missing members of it. This makes you very uncomfortable. As, well, you were glad not to see many of these people for quite a while. Melissus is seated at Croesus' right hand, and there are no chairs left open for you. You were not planned for here. There is one chair on the other side of Uncle Melly left empty, which is presumably for Ilari, but it is impossible to say for sure.
I think it is safe to say, unfortunately, that your families have met.
Mm-hmm. Lissa, you notice, while Dask's attention is taken by Croesus and the rest of his family, that seated almost at the foot of the table, but not quite opposite Croesus, off to the Croesus' left, very near the end of the table, is a familiar figure that you weren't entirely sure you would ever see again. This is Brother Umber, the mystic from Calavan. He is seated near the foot of the table. He's wearing his robes, his hood is down, he's oiled and combed and coiffed as well as he ever was, and his face lights up when he sees the two of you enter. He begins to stand. Now, Ramnet, you are just taking all of this in. You have never seen any of these people other than Uncle Mally, who you met minutes ago. But you do get kind of a weird vibe from this guy standing up.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has a moment to react, but in the process of you taking this moment, Brother Umber is taking a deep breath as though to proclaim something.
I make myself glorious and also drop whatever veil, like I let my spirit shine as brightly as possible.
Most excellent. So we'll have a roll for that in just a moment. Any action from Dask?
I try to rapid fire introduce all my companions, making deep eye contact with Brother Umber when I introduce Romnit, and when I make eye contact with Croesus, performing that merchant's bow for a third time, but an archaic version of it that really only he would care about. I assume I'll roll Charm plus Graces to see if I pull it off. The way this would look to an outsider would be that I bow and open my jacket, but I continue arching my body such that it almost looks like my forehead is going to touch my stomach. It doesn't look comfortable.
Mm-hmm. So yes, you're going to roll a Charm plus Graces, and Lissa is going to roll a Command Inspire, and Romnut, are you taking any particular action?
I will offer a similar sort of troubadour's bow as I offered to Ilary. However, I would offer it in the fashion of not even a servant to a king, but a troubadour to truly one who has ruled the world. And do it in such a fashion that it is very obvious that there is smoke trailing from my eyes and hair.
Indeed. So this is going to be a Charm plus Graces, which for you becomes a Charm plus Fascinate.
Yes.
Which is 3 in the master die. So I will collect rolls in just a moment. So, Lissa, your roll.
2 2s.
2 2s. All right. Dask, your roll.
3 6s.
You have a gift. And
2 9s becomes 3 9s.
Excellent. It is hard to say whether Lissa gets more attention being glorious or Romnet gets more attention with his very, very sort of ostentatious troubadour's bow under the circumstances. What is sure is that Dask maybe doesn't go ignored, but does not get the lion's share of the attention.
Honestly, given your family, this is
a familiar
probably a
feeling.
kindness.
Oh.
It's a deeply familiar feeling. It is a kindness, and I will say that even if no one sees it, and even if no one has this point of reference, as I rise from the bow, what people are not noticing is a shampoo commercial.
Oh, god damn it, Drew.
Croesus Tyr looks a little bit taken aback at Lissa's display of glory and Romnet's display of courtly obsequiousness. And the effect on the rest of the family is one of sort of bewilderment. In the beat that follows, Uncle Melly stands and says very formally, "May I introduce? Dask Tyr returned from his travels. His betrothed, Lissa," and he pauses, realizing that he does not know your last name, "Duchess of Fury, I believe, and his companion, Romnet," and then formally takes a seat.
My name is Lissa Crate.
And I fear...
Uncle Billy stands back up again.
And I fear that
and goes,
due to divine plans, they are unfortunately no longer betrothed. They are, however, they remain, however, in my God's service.
And great friends.
We'll roll. Indeed. I will roll again if you'd like, but I want to... This is an important moment of performance. I look stricken.
Mm-hmm.
I look dutiful. I also look content.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Charm plus Graces, please.
Oh,
As I am saying this, I will probably look very, flat formal on the surface, with an underlying aura of a little bit smug.
Solid. That's 3 3s from me.
Okay, I believe that is a charm roll that becomes 3 7s.
It's due with that.
Because
Because
you are striking 7 boy.
now more than ever.
Do you need me to roll anything for that, Adam?
I don't believe so. I think you are still under the auspices of your previous roll. So, this information all gets thrown out and processed very quickly, at which point Uncle Melly looks sort of bewildered, but it's hard to question Romnet's credibility when he's got Smoking Void Skull.
It do help a lot.
Which is drawing a lot of attention, and Uncle Melly slowly sits down. After a beat, Croesus here speaks. He says, in a very sort of creaky voice that seems disused, he says, "Your god. And who might that be?"
The Obsidian God who watches from the darkness. I am
When he
his
says
voice
this-
and his prophet, and I see the truth in
When
it.
he said...
Sorry, Drew.
No, not at all. I'm sorry. Because hell yes. As you say this, the world behind you and simultaneously the world behind Brother Umber ever so briefly falls away.
Good use of a ghost miracle. Brother Umber has not sat down this entire time. He was mid-proclamation. Like his mouth was open to try and give a proclamation as you entered. And now he looks as though he has swallowed a fly. But he has not sat down. And Uncle Melly looks at Croesus. Croesus looks at Brother Umber. And Brother Umber sort of squares his shoulders and says, "Well, great it is to have 3 servants of the Obsidian God among us. I told you that we would be able to draw the god's attention to our plight, bring help to the city, and lo, it has happened. I have met before the disciples of the Obsidian God in Calavan, when the ocean itself declared war upon our people."
in the middle of this,
now-
I want to do a lesser creation of the furious need to use the bathroom once again. After seeing
You've discovered a new
success.
toy, Alyssa.
And
I am going to have to create some constraints
I
in
know.
this because it is a tangential use at best, but it is very funny.
she
It's
will
also
she will
going there.
tire of it quickly. She's just literally tired of everything right now.
Would you say that
Sure.
in conversation, this technique is OP? Because it's about having to pee.
Yeah.
Ignore
See
me.
yourself out,
That
Drew.
was great.
I'll be over here.
I
See you,
did not
see you next
specify
podcast.
P this time with intention.
That's fair.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
fair.
Do roll your Command Inspire. You do get your Master Die, so it's just a matter of degree.
2 4s.
Brother Umber begins to speak faster. He goes, "And lo, how they have delivered Calavan. They now come to us to deliver us from our current peril. Would you excuse me one moment?" And he runs out of the room.
I will just raise an eyebrow.
While the door is open, Ilari comes in and is about to say something when she sees Lissa. Now,
Can I reinforce whatever gloriousness is occurring as soon as I'm aware of her presence?
Sure enough. Now, Lissa, you, we established before, are usually habitually wearing a blacksmith's apron.
Mhm.
Would you refresh for our listeners in their minds a description of Lissa as she stands here emitting glory in front of the Tyr family?
I imagine that her already impressive stature is somehow even more impressive. Like the gravitas of someone that is used to filling the room, not with a degree of self-importance, but with just a warmth to their presence. She still has a very deep forest green tunic on, strategically with the laces kind of slightly loosened, to kind of display all of the baubles and trinkets and charms that
All
she
of the goods.
wears on her person at all times. Tucked into the braids of her hair, hoops upon hoops of earrings climbing the cartilage of her ears. And of course, she still has her, blacksmith apron on. That's just almost a matter of comfort for her. She hasn't been to forge in quite some time, so it's remarkably clean. All of her clothes are probably remarkably clean, having taken a long dip in the Vanta Black bath.
Yeah, they're probably a shade or two darker now, too.
Probably has a kind of extra degree of darkness if the Hollyhock god allows it.
Sure, certainly.
And once you get over just her general appearance, I imagine it's fairly bright in here, so the slits of her eyes are probably a bit more pronounced, and she is grinning with all of her furious might, displaying the fang-like sharpness of her canines. Her tools and electro hang unused around her belt, but still showing signs that they are well cared for as they are well used.
So this is the tableau that Ilari enters onto, and there's a beat where she just sort of stares, and then she says, with again her sort of accent slipping as Rowena's did earlier, "Lissa, you're the betrothed of the Tyr, nephew? Why, I've never been so proud!" And she goes to hug you.
The not betrothed, the obsidian god, what have you, he nixed the betrothal, but hi, Mima.
Her hug falls away before she quite reaches you and says, "Yes, of course. Well, I see that you're as strong as ever." And she moves to her seat and sits down as she says, "This is unexpected, but what did I miss?" And Krios' tears sort of goes from looking at her to looking at Dask and says, "Yes, you will explain yourself."
I will. Grandfather, it's a great pleasure to later. We'll talk later. These are my most trusted companions and closest friends. I pointedly do put an arm out toward, I don't know exactly what our arrangement is, but I indicate camaraderie with all concerned, but I very pointedly take Ramnat's hand specifically while doing so, and I say, 3 of us in the service of the Obsidian God, and a 4th in the service of Nyx, a god from foreign lands. We have all arrived here today. Late, indeed, but not too late, to liberate this city, this great city, this perhaps greatest of cities, from the threat befalling it. And we will do so, because it is our duty, and because you are family, now and forever, Grandfather.
And I'd like to point out that we've arrived of our own volition.
Very much so. We were delayed by divine machinations, but even the divine could not keep us from helping here.
So, Dask, what role are you attempting to perform here to try and get in your grandfather's good graces?
It's a damn good question. Which is the role you do for things that are hopeless? Let's see.
Womp womp.
I think so. Here's what would be happening in the back of Dask's head. Krios' Tyr, even in his reduced state, knows a lie when he hears it, knows a story when he hears it. This is actually, I'd be running all the stories through my head about him. People call him the Hawk of Theret. He can spot a lie, the intention of his interlocutor, his negotiating companion, from a mile away, people say. That was in the old days, but even now, he can recognize and almost respect a good lie. So I think this is charm plus lie. I think I expect him not to believe all of it, but I hope that he'll respect the art.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Can I support with a miracle?
I was going to ask what roll you were going to make. What miracle are you thinking to do?
I want to create a feeling of furious joy and Croesus tear upon
That'll be a new
seeing and
sensation
realizing
for him, it seems.
that his grandkid has arrived to help.
Okay, all right. And I would like you to name a role to accompany this. What do you think is most appropriate for the remarks that you made during Dask's little speech there?
I mean, the command inspire, but it's not for a large group of people. Would it be charm and graces, charm and fascinate? She's not trying to
Charm and Graces.
She's not trying to be charming right now. That's why I'm a little bit torn.
Command plus fascinate.
Yeah, I think let's go actually with command plus graces, but you can use a bonus die. So you'll roll one more and discard the lowest die.
Okay.
So that's going to be 4 dice, discard the lowest for you. So let's get those rolled.
Okay. Let the record show that I realized halfway through that speech that I was an idiot for not writing a little poem and using my master die in verse. But, oh well.
My lowest die was a 5, and I have a pair of 8s. And a 10, if it counts.
Well done.
Pair of 9s over here.
Pair of 8s and pair of 9s. You wind down your little address there to Croesus Tyr, and you see Dask, Uncle Melly, sort of looking at you consideringly as you wind down. And Croesus sort of folds his hands slowly in front of him and says, I see. Now we're family. Well, if your obsidian god has taught you that, then I suppose the obsidian god has taught you well. The absent brother Umber has been telling us much about the obsidian god, and his eyes drift first to Ramnet and then to Lissa, as he says, it seems that your group is somewhat more touched by whatever power might exist, and we have need of it. The army that assails our walls is not entirely human, and we see stranger creatures by the day emerging from the pavilions. Our scouts theorize that they're trying to breed living siege weapons. He seems extremely disgusted by this idea. And he sits back a little bit in his chair and says, So, if you can contribute to the war effort, I invite you to do so. If you cannot, I ask that you leave the city as soon as possible the way that you came, so as not to be a drain on our already thin resources. The Tyr family has been buying food for the whole city, and our coffers, while deep, are not infinite, despite your seeming conviction otherwise in your endless pursuits. So, what will it be? What can you bring to the table, grandson? As you take a breath to respond, the door slams open behind you, and a messenger runs in, saying, Sirs, madams, the Sword of Theret has returned! And that is where we'll end our session. You may all take 1 mortal experience point.
It was going to be so awkward to have to bring up the Swift of Theret. Oh, what a relief.
You are welcome.
Oh, we got replenished. We got a mortal experience point. We've resolved that business with the betrothal. Is it weird that I'm feeling good?
Good times.
I mean, we were all refreshed in order to
Fight a war.
Be put to the test.
Yeah. Well, that's for next time. For now.
Indeed. I'm sure we'll talk about this in the peaks, but man, was it fun to put Krios' tier on screen finally, so to speak.
I had a feeling that's where you were going, and I was stoked about it. So yeah, this is a good mini plug for listening to Dice Peaks, our little extra show for people who patronize us.
That's lots of fun.
There you go. Yeah, we'll be recording that very shortly. But in the meantime, that concludes this session of Dice Punks. Thanks for joining us, and I hope our players and listeners enjoyed it as much as I did, because we know I had a ball. We hope, too, that you'll join us again next time. If you're hearing us now, then you probably know where to listen to this, but you can find us almost any place that one can listen to podcasts, as well as on the wider web at dicepunks.com and on Twitter as @dicepunks. But with that, I think we're ready to say farewell, so say goodbye to the kind folks at home, players.
Thanks for listening, and be honest with those who are honest with you. Don't be afraid to use a well-placed lie with those who lied to you, and now that I'm thinking about it, don't take my advice.
Thanks for listening, everyone, and remember, family doesn't end with blood. You can very well choose and make families of your own if the one you're born with doesn't suit you.
Thank you for listening, folks. And remember, darkness really is in the eye of the beholder.
Excellent, and as the poet once said, beneath the falling night and heaven's shutting gate, pray keep your tongue held tight, or suffer the same fate.
Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in, and stick around through the admin stuff. There's a lovely Dask fact waiting for you at the end of it. The songs in this episode, theme of the Dice Punks and its acoustic version, were written and recorded by the Regal of Nothing himself, Drew. Cover art is by Joanne, who has appeared on the podcast now and again. Check out her work around the internet, where she goes by Anything Sews Embroidery. Site design and graphics for dicepunks.com are by Robin, the player behind Lissa, the irrepressible Duchess of Fury. Rain and the one-roll engine it runs on were created by Greg Stolze, whose work can be found in a frankly astonishing number of cool places, but I'll point you toward gregstolze.com. Nobilis was created by Jenna Caterin Moran and can be found alongside much of her other really intriguing work both in and outside of tabletop role-playing at afarandsunlessland.wordpress.com. Links to both systems and authors can be found on the Punk Grimoire section of our website, dicepunks.com. Thanks so much for listening. If you liked what you heard, well, that's reward enough on its own, really, but if you're so inclined, you can help us out by rating and reviewing us wherever you listen to us, telling your friends who you think would like us to give us a listen, and even by heading over to our Patreon at patreon.com/dicepunks. We have fun rewards available to backers, including a patron-only Discord, and access to the Dice Peaks After Show for episodes 1 and following. Regardless, we hope you'll tune in again, and until then, remember, subtlety is for cowards.
Weighty matters have been on the table, but I've been thinking recently about a matter much simpler, namely falling. I recently had occasion to study the effect of falling for an unusually long period of time, and furthermore to contemplate the history of the practice. The Order of the Aleph does so often, of course, flinging themselves from the highest sea cliff of the confluence into the fairly deep, often calm, thankfully unrocky, bay below. The idea is to formulate an entire theory of mind in the space between the leap and the splash, on the understanding that true wisdom only comes very slowly, too slowly to notice it forming, or very quickly, too quickly to plan. When performing this rite, I myself was struck with the idea that human minds are bottles of alcohol, and that what we perceive as personality could be called flavor, and what we perceive as intelligence could be called the strength of the spirit. Spirit in both senses, an elder Aleph sister said to me as I was drying off, her face implacable, as though my thought was the most obvious thing in the world. Of course, there is an upper limit to how far a mortal can fall without dying, and indeed, an admittedly considerably higher limit on how high any point in Neolith can be. But that limitation, counterintuitively perhaps, is what makes falling in the mortal world interesting. For if you ask a similar question about nobles, you'll quickly hear unconfirmed accounts of some power whose domain is wells or waterfalls or such like, and who has therefore been in the process of falling at all times since time immemorial. This teaches us, once again, that there is a disappointing lack of nuance to infinity. It's a Dask fact.